Hi, Professor. This is Frank. I'll be talking about the second half of the conclusion. So we investigated the effects of caffeine on the 1 mile rockport walk test. So subjects ingested 3 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight, and then they performed the walk test with caffeine and without caffeine. So the initial trial was without caffeine, and the second trial was with caffeine. So we compared times. And our results indicated that 3%, the performance was 3% faster. So times were 3% faster. Mostly all subjects improved. I think one of them was an outlier that didn't improve, but the mean improvement was around 3% faster walk times. So limitations of our study include convenient sampling. Obviously, we were limited to the sample size of our classmates in our kinesiology class. So these results don't represent the entire population. So I think the average age, the mean age was somewhere around 29 years old. The youngest being somewhere in the early 20s, and then the oldest being somewhere in the early 40s. So the results are limited to that kind of age range. If we want to talk about the effects of caffeine on youth, it's not really applicable here since we don't have any subjects that were in that age range. Neither did we have any subjects that were a little bit older. So we are limited by the sample size of our subjects and the age of our subjects. Also, caffeine tolerance can be variable. So each individual could be affected differently by caffeine, thus making it difficult for us to generalize findings. For example, someone who is pretty accustomed to caffeine and consumes caffeine every day, as opposed to someone who doesn't. Someone who doesn't consume caffeine, and then we ask them to ingest 3 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of their body weight, their effects are going to probably be a lot different. Someone who pretty consistently injects a couple hundred milligrams of caffeine every single day. And we also only looked at the acute effects of caffeine. So, for example, what happens if you ingest 2 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight for 2 weeks and then you perform this test? We don't know that because we only looked at the immediate effects of caffeine on 2 separate trials of this study or of the test. And there are other uncontrolled variables. I think hydration has a huge effect on your performance on any kind of aerobic exercise. So how hydrated are you before you perform this test is a huge deal. Sleep. Did you sleep 10 hours before you did this test, or did you sleep 3 hours? We don't know that because we didn't control for that. Caloric intake. Are you well fed? What was your carbohydrate intake a couple hours before this test? We don't know that either. The timing of the test. Did you take it? Did you perform this test as soon as you woke up in the morning or later in the evening? We didn't control for that. The testing environment was inconsistent as well. We didn't have people test in the same track or on the same course. Everyone kind of performed this test on their own. They were supposed to map out 1 mile on their own, and then they tested themselves. So we didn't really control for the testing environment, which could affect the results that you get. Applications of our study. So the study confirms that caffeine can be an ergogenic aid and enhance performance on aerobic exercise, such as the 1 mile rockport walk test. This means that athletes can supplement with caffeine to improve performance. However, must consider the limitations that we just talked about. It can vary, by individual. So you must consider that. Also, some people, none of them were reported in this study, but we know that caffeine can cause jitterness if you're caffeine sensitive, or it could affect, your gastrointestinal, maybe, make you uncomfortable. So that might affect performance. So that's something that must be considered when you try to apply these findings of this study to your specific situation. Coaches and athletes need to experiment with dosages and timing. So we don't know if you have a better result by ingesting caffeine an hour before, 20 minutes before, 2 hours before. We don't know. So it's up to the athlete and coach to experiment their individual preferences of caffeine. Play around with the dosages. Is 5 milligrams of caffeine better than 3 milligrams of caffeine for your specific situation? How does that affect with food, and all these other variables must be considered when you apply. But we know that caffeine can be used as an ergogenic aid and can improve performance in aerobic when performing aerobic exercise. Thank you.